The philosophy of determinism implies destiny. Accuracy in physical predictions about the destination of the physical state on the universe tautologically includes destiny. Must one believe that? Matter is the leftover non-antimatter surplus from the energy expansion to expanding space-time. One or an infinity of universes, God is the prime reality that generated them all, so I have faith in that. The future history of the universe, one, was determined by the initial state of affairs or boundary conditions set in the beginning. God isn't in or out of the universe or universe one. He theistically evolved or popped into experience a universe one like a box of Lucky Charms on a table set in the desert out of thin air, complete with a 2% milk and people with memories to eat it. One must have faith and also consider the quantum cosmology and teleology of it all. Schopenhauer wrote, with an advancing era of scientific investigation, logic, and ratiocination of perceptible matters led to things beyond. Schopenhauer was a Kantian in part and returned to the noumenal characteristic Kant wrote about in the Critique, as well as atomism and cosmological areas. The equation cannot evaluate itself. It's like Cantor's theorem about the impossibility of making a set of all possible sets, including itself. Perception incorporating the nature of its own workings is a bit of a categorical error sort of reference, though something of a linguistic refinement would be useful. Perception is the means of inputting sense data, and understanding is what occurs in consciousness to bring it reflectively to mind. A computer camera might input photons and other sense data and talk about it without being actually aware of it, sort of like a robotic Terry Schiavo, perhaps without consciousness, though animated by software mechanical enhancements, perhaps. Perceptions plus understanding lead the way into positing about the nature of the universe, a valid procedure for cosmologists and philosophers equally too, I think. Schopenhauer was using Kant's terms of phenomenon, noumena in context. It is a good point of entry into metaphysical contemplations about the nature of existence for itself, though Schopenhauer's personal life was rather reprehensible in some aspects. Because A is B, it doesn't mean that A is C. Perhaps certainly logic is plain about that so far as it pertains to language, yet neither does A equal B imply that A does not equal C. Jesus Christ is the truth for himself, yet people are free to develop their own truth theory or select one of many existing truth theories, such as disquotation theory expressed by P.F. Strawson. Emanations from the one were postulated by Plotinus to have given rise to that stuff that is the universe, that human sentience experiences as the universe. Plotinus was a philosophical realist continuing the work of Plato, yet he expressed a metaphysical paradigm that entails or includes paradigms such as the one could discover in Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, and even Judaism. God is personal, yet all things return unto the perfection of the one. The difficulty is in recognizing that Jesus Christ is God himself in the protocol relating to saving mankind, lost in the material seemingness of the universe one. On what the material world is and something of how it differs from the actual nature of what humanity experiences in receiving and interpreting data from the universe, it is helpful to consider briefly Arthur Schopenhauer, who wrote about Immanuel Kant's transcendental idealism, that is, the alternative to Platonic realism. Space itself, quote, space itself is nothing but mere representation, and whatever is in it must therefore be contained in that representation. There is nothing, whatever, in space except so far as it is really represented in it, unquote, Kant. If we take away, quote, if we take away the thinking subject, the whole material world must vanish because it is nothing but a phenomenon in the sensibility of our own subject in a certain class of its representations, unquote, Kant. Quote, conversely, if we desire to abstract from the subjectivity of the subject, yet to have something over the contrary takes place, and this leads to materialism, unquote, Schopenhauer in the Fourfold Root of Reason. Quote, every true, consequently, really primary force of nature and every fundamental chemical property belongs to these forces. It is essentially a qualitas occulta, i.e. it does not admit a physical but only a metaphysical explanation. In other words, of an explanation which transcends the world of phenomena, unquote, Schopenhauer. Sartre stays away from discussing God and being a nothingness and the critique of dialectical reason. Sartre's writings in existentialism are largely not theological, and it is an error to posit them as such. In being a nothingness, he describes the functions of perception and direct experience and its limits. Sartre wrote that to know what is to see through someone else's eyes. He would need to be God, and any concept that exceeds what one knows directly and became what someone else perceives of oneself would be a self-contradiction. While that is impossible for man, it isn't impossible for God. Mankind and that which exists were created by God, and the awareness of all that is created by himself is necessary rather than contradictory. God may be thought of as the set of all sets with awareness of the content of all the sets, while mankind may be thought of as individual subset with a self-identity as a subset. To know what another subset thinks or perceives of one's own self as a set would contradict the identity of one's own set of protocol and make one a higher order set of subsets, so a horse of a different color. Do organisms always evolve in more complex forms? Shannon entropy is a measurement of the loss of information associated with the transmission of information. Physical entropy is the evolution of order into disorder. Each phenomena accompanies the evolution of living organisms, not just bureaucracies. Evolution into simpler forms would be an increase in Shannon entropy if one associates biological complexity with information theory. The form of organisms may implicitly evolve toward complexity, yet not all evolutions necessarily succeed and may suffer arrested development or death. Death in heterosexual contexts tends to increase the statistical occurrence of genetic variation and opportunities for selection by freeing up space available. Life, however, may be considered to be an information assembly process of evolution toward a post-organic form of sentience. Spirit develops form from life as self-awareness complies with intense biofeedback sensory systems of stimulus response and redundant adaptation. Life seems to have an implicit characteristic of fruitfulness, multiplying. The environment may not support such population increases in all instances, and then a non-sensory adaptation of intelligence to overcome or transcend the physical environment successfully may be preferred, though, through natural selection of intelligence. Intelligence socially isn't always or inevitably destined to increase or overcome more insensate forms of life. Yet as life complies and social intelligence complies, complex forms organically have a better opportunity statistically to evolve more complex forms. Life itself added new inorganic compounds and molecules to the planet Earth's inventory. The complex ontology of life is an ordering instead of a disordering of both information and order. The direction of life is of an evolution toward complexity, yet there must be an overall conservation of such, and even Shannon entropy may be a manifestation of pluralism within the monism of the unified field of the universe. Omniscience may have downloaded information through the unified field that manifests in space-time as destiny receives. Evolution, or evolutions, might be described as an ordered universe running down into disorder and even into complex disorder. From an initial condition from the one, the universe has somehow emanated and proximally obtained a zero entropy origin to evolve toward maximum entropy. Complexity is paradoxically an increase in disorder, in an intermediate stage toward disorder. I realize that it is good to keep the argument here simple, yet I will increase the complexity a little in an effort to get to a better comprehension of what is a simple ordered cosmic origin theory, cosmologically speaking. I want to write a couple of paragraphs on a possible reason the universe could be expanding as an idea expressed by the one, perhaps for a simple reason. It could be a sort of poem, a line into a circle into a line, or a loop metaphor or structure to explain why the phenomena of the universe being could be considered as a set theoretical paradigm of a consistent level of complexity to simplicity, perhaps akin to a unified field theory's simplified categorical explanation of a pluralistic appearance of the universe. Maybe the universe is a thought of God. Einstein remarked that God does not play dice with the universe. Then Schrodinger's wave function determined probabilities of quantum mechanical locations such as anachronistic electrons. A universe cannot be entirely deterministic and predictably consistent with the existence of intelligence. Intelligence can change the physics of predetermined inertial outcomes. Even supercomputers doing physical predictions of quantum cosmology would find their own computational work unable to change to account for the deterministic alterations intelligence can place into an inanimate and deterministic physical cosmos. Computers would find their own quantum predictions encountering interference from their own self-generated predictions of what the deterministic pattern of the future universe would be, thus affecting the probable shaping of the universe with a pattern of artificial intelligence. Computational modeling of an expanding universe in quantum uncertainty itself has obvious challenges in structuring a universe that requires expansion by the actualization of uncertainty. Uncertainty is necessary for change and for time to exist in space. Time's dimension interacting with spatial dimensions together, creating uncertainty is a sort of analogous friction along interacting lines. When quantum computing becomes integrated into the universe itself, the computer modeling of itself would be false, a sort of false consciousness illusion. The universe as a computer expanding to permit uncertainty would permit the universe to be a sort of thinking machine for itself, or at least the expression of someone that thinks or has thought. Sometimes organisms become talk radio hosts or television news analysts, and extinction has ended the careers of all sorts of humble life forms. before they become complex. One cell scum and others may take a very long time to snowball into complexity, perhaps billions of years. Humble blue-green algae may seem never to grow more complex in some forms. Yet who can say that today's prokaryote or eukaryote may not be next billion years president of the United Universe? The parameters of a necessary evolution would entail the concept that evolution is the agent of change. One cannot be certain that given a trillion years to evolve or become something different, more complex, something might not even have moved within observable human history, something like federal action to secure U.S. borders completely against illegal immigration. Some organisms become more complex because Dr. Frankenstein genetic recombination engineered it so, and complexity engineered by intelligent design isn't usually considered to be an evolution. Nonetheless, any organism at a given state of existence should become more complex as its order breaks down. A reductio ad absurdum would indicate that organisms simply should not become less complex through evolution. Change in the breakdown of simple order tends to increase complexity rather than decrease it, unless one is referring to conscious information or intelligence. In complex intelligence, intellect at any given point in time, even artificial intelligence, informational loss or evolution, might be a natural characteristic of particular organisms, or even of social intelligence over time as the structure of support breaks down. While the evolution of intelligence from simple to complex over time is possible, it isn't necessary, and unlike the physical structure, it can become more simple or even dysfunctional through evolution. As the physical forces of the universe act upon a given organic clump, metabolizing for itself its component elements under the influence, radiation, the strong, weak, and nuclear forces, gravity, and such, will tend not simply to cohere at a given structural level, but to experience a fission from a particular initial or ancillary form changing toward an increasing rather than decreasing component numbers and complexity. From automobile construction with 10 million complex parts and legal criteria and attachments to oscillations of national economic infrastructure, and even inorganic social components of structures tending to increase in complexity, while the universe for itself runs down from a low entropy condition to a high state of entropy. While the temporal incarnation of the universe crumbles and permutates, forms eternal peace with God through Jesus Christ, transcending the vicissitudes of time. All right, mister. Drop your weapon and reach for the sky. Human logic in relation to God. God proceeds logic and thought about him. Logic is a method of thinking, perhaps implicit naturally in human ratiocination, that can be improved. Athletic ability is natural too, but can also improve with much training. I cannot remember how many times I've sought to have moved something or accomplished some difficult physical action with no luck. Then thought of God and asked for help to let his will flow, and then tried it again with success. If God is the real pervasive fact of the universe, then letting his will be done can be a more effective way of getting one's own will done too. Some wonder if the universe is a continuum or made of individual parts, how those individual parts act together in strings or membranes, or alternatively, how the continuum differentiates into individual things, are perennial philosophical questions. What relation could God have directly to mankind in any sort of continuum? Is God knowable directly? Many theologians have believed not. Hayes casts through thought a mystical experience, believed they could encounter the light of God, while others said that to be an heretical opinion. Apophatic theology is a negative theology. It describes God a little by saying what he is not. He is not limited to the temporal. He is not limited to small or large size or any dimension at all. God exceeds human logic and reasoning capacity, yet paradoxically created them. Human beingness and its locale of reason occur within a unified field of material force analogous to a fish being immersed into water. The life in a space-time continuum of uncertain composition and dimension is radically changing, eroding, and in inertial reference frames with intervals of time and beingness, nothingness. Human logic must configure scenarios of spirit and possibilities for a temporal permanence. Within this criterion of evolving times and permutating space-time relations, human reasoning and logic must necessarily contemplate a phenomenal termination of the continuum of personal logical thought and physical existence, mortality. That seems the paradigm of internal ubiquitous in the nature of things, within its own self-aware life. God is considered to be the emanator of the order and form of the phenomena of space-time, and his logic preexists, sustains, and follows the temporal manifestation or actualization of the universe from time equal to 0 to time equal omega. Heraclitus said that you can never step in the same river twice. The water would flow and be made of individual parts and thus different each moment, always changing. Yet the categorical error of naming what a river is the problem. Human DNA has flowed since the beginning of its existence and changed external forms quite a bit in its representations of individuals. Those individuals have, though, now and then existed and differently. One might ask what relationship one has in thinking anything today to what Julius Caesar thought as a living individual, or to that of any other living person. What is the significance of thought? Maybe a more basic question. Does it mean anything? And if it does, is it meaningful to God necessarily, or to no one at all? It seems that the alternative opinion to thought from the human stream of DNA manifested as complete human beings being meaningful might be that of thought as meaningful solely to narrow self-existence in social associations and self. Of course, there is a godless atheist movement today that believes that morality doesn't exist and thought is something superfluous, like an embellishment of the just basic flow of the blob of organic existence. That should be run by scientists or atheist elite politicians concentrating wealth, perhaps in autonomy. One could, in a sense, individualize the inquiry of human thought or thought through using logical thinking forms being necessarily meaningful to God, such an extent that the meaning is extirpated or extinct. The aesthetic sort of regard given to language and phenomenal forms of reason by some contemporary opinion, such that it couldn't have any kind of transcending or platonic meaning or function, is a logical ancillary point to the deconstructionist drift into atheism for fashion purposes. I'm not sure at all that one could interest God much with human demonstrations of modal logic or some sort of symbolic logic proofs. Is probably above and beyond all that and would consider it not so hot. God may be interested, however, in proofs of human sentience or just relationships with sentient human beings. And in that regard, perhaps the maturity into better modes of logic would be worthwhile or interesting even to God, perhaps. I have no idea. One might hope so. Human thought may debatably be improved through logic, yet knowledge is developed within the Kantian categories of mind given by the universe. This predetermined element comprises an a priori object potential that human subjective powers consider within and contemplate about. Humanity sees through a glass darkly, just in knowing in part. God, as the perfectly omnipotent being, has no element of uncertainty or doubt. Those are categories found in the temporal and the physical cosmos' basic construction in order to permit change to exist, including space-time. Aristotle and Aquinas, Fried, Strauss, and Quine contributed significantly to logic, yet God is one, all ideas and forms, content, and being are contingent upon emanations from the One, the Son, and the Spirit are of the One, as being for others as well as being for themselves in one. Human logic is an effort to reconcile and categorize words and objects accurately. It helps ordering and increasing knowledge. Alternatively, God is omniscient and has all knowledge a priori. Plotinus speculated that even thought is necessary for the One. Perfection and logic in contingency are relative and inferior, farther away from the One. Reconciliation to the one is possible only through faith in the saving grace of the Lord Jesus Christ. Human consciousness and reason, with its propensity for logical structuring and ordering relationships with the external world and of concepts about the external world and ideas for themselves, is an effort to accurately classify words and reference. Philosopher David Kelly, in his book on the art of reasoning, noted that human language is preponderantly about the effort to categorize ideas, things, words, and objects meaningfully. In this universe of a pluralist, apparent character with innumerable objects and relations between objects, descriptions about objects and ideas about ideas, it is necessary to categorize and classify the nearly infinite number of possible subjects and objects with universal and particular names, so anyone would understand what was being talked about and referred to. God is the universal one, beyond description, with a contingent reference association of his creation. Yet humans believe they have received direct revelation from God now and then, and some believe that some knowledge about God or about the nature of God may be inferred or inducted from the creation or universe in itself. Is human logic that is about naming and accurately associating and discussing all that exists able to model the perfectly non-pluralistic being that is one and three persons in any way? Probably not. Human thought is not omnipotent, and it is written that all seeking after knowledge is an effort by the incomplete to complete knowledge and arrive at the perfect omnipotent oneness that is God's sole province. God, as the one, has a need of thought. Plotinus speculated in his Enneads for the reason that he has perfect knowledge of everything a priori. Plotinus believed that somehow emanations from the one became ontology of the intelligence comprising the world of forms, giving existence to time and universes. In the imperfect or variegated material universe known by human experience and quantum cosmologists, astrophysicists, philosophers, and linguists, the human spiritual challenge is to reconcile unto the absolute perfection of the one through absolute faith in Jesus Christ, who came to earth to atone for the human original sin and imperfection simply by being and becoming in a material universe with space-time and sin and perfection, except for himself. While some forms may be perfect or almost perfect in this universe, many are broken and imperfect. Lost souls never seek the monistic one of God for himself, though the Lord Jesus Christ and through the Lord Jesus Christ, and face a future forever as a broken form without the light of God in a cold, dead universe. Logic, considerations, the protocols and relations of physics, theology, the Bible, comparative religions, and epistemology for themselves, and address the truth and probable veracity of each unified in the most comprehensive comprehensive synthetic form. Judgment is a priori that it could. The paradox of seeking a monistic, Parmenian, Plotinian oneness as an element of a pluralist universe isn't at all hopeless. In the book of Genesis, chapter 3, God said that mankind has become as little gods learning the difference between good and evil. Evil in the Old Testament, J. Vernon McGee said, referred to natural bad things rather than to human wickedness, which is actually what we mean when we say evil. Mankind, in stepping onto the road of philosophy and learning about physics in some way, we're beginning the long quest of logic and knowledge that in a small way represents an aspect of the nature of God. God, in chapter 3 of Genesis, made the world more challenging for mankind than in order perhaps to forestall an obsessive neurotic self-fascination with things of the contingent material world for themselves that might forever separate humanity and human form from any possibility of reconciliation with the source truth of the one, God. Human logic in relation to God is that of outsiders looking in, yet God may be love in itself, transcending logic of any variety.